Welcome to the Stevie Collier and Andy Peliquin. I'm your host, Fantasy Fiends podcast, and today we have Eggebeen James, and we're going to be talking about his books today. Welcome.
I'm pretty sure James got that we did this all backwards. Totally screwed up the intro, but it was on purpose this time, James. So you're lucky.
That was for Rebecca.
No problem. I've had my name murdered pretty bad throughout my entire life.
I said Eggebeen, right?
You got to pronounce right. Yeah, just the order backwards.
Thank God. Eggebeen James. I got to say, and before the podcast started, we were talking with James about he's traveled to France multiple times. He is an engineer who has decided to work from home to do full-time authoring. I mean, I guess it's like half-time authoring. Is that like, do you write a lot of words every day, or?
I try to write like 3 hours a day. Yeah, I'll write like 3,000 or 4,000 words a day, and
nice.
With
programming, you make me seem so lazy. I feel after 4,000 words, I'm like a brain dead zombie and only can feed myself and go to the bathroom in a bag. I was gonna say colostomy bag. Dear God. Oh man. Already off to a good start. I don't think we've discussed colostomy bags on the Fantasy Fiends podcast, and that's actually today's topic.
That would be a first for us, Stevie.
I actually have a lot of experience with those.
Oh, do you really?
I do. Not myself.
Okay. I actually I know someone who had it, and it was an extremely sad story. So it's kind of weird. It's anyway, Anyway, off topic. Thanks, Andy, for taking us on that awkward topic. Today we are discussing redemption, but before we get into that, James, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Wow. I started off on a farm in the Midwest, getting up in the morning and taking care of chickens and pigs and cows, and then going to school and coming back and doing it again. And I decided that was way too much work because I didn't feel like getting up so early. So I joined the Navy, and I said, teach me about computers and airplanes and take me someplace that doesn't snow on yours. So I spent 6 years in the Navy working on jet fighters and avionics. They took me all over the world, and then they dropped me off in San Diego, and I parked it and pretty much stayed here ever since. And then got into high tech and did a lot of traveling in high tech. I've been in a lot of time in Asia, a lot of time in Europe. And then just recently decided it's too much work to travel, and I can stay home and write now.
Where in Asia?
A lot of time in Japan. I've probably been there like 50, 60 times. Korea, maybe 30, 40. Philippines a dozen times. I used to go to Japan every month.
What do you think about Japan? Because I love the Japanese language.
I like Japan, but I like Korea better.
You like Korea better?
I do. The people are much more, they have a much better sense of humor. They're more fun.
I got you. Yeah, I follow a lot of people on YouTube who study Japanese, who have studied Japanese and switched to Korean. And like you, they spend a lot more time in Korea now. Mm-hmm. And you actually see them having drinks and having a lot of fun. But I really want to go to Japan, and then Korean might be the third language I tackle.
You can learn to read it really easily. It's phonetic, so it'll take a day to learn how to read the signs, even if you don't know what the words mean.
Yeah, I actually do know how to read it. Not the kanji, the hiragana, and the katakana. But you're right. You can read it all day, but not know exactly what it means. You just sound Japanese. So, James, before we start the podcast, we usually talk about something interesting that happened to us this week or soonish to this day. And I should have warned you before. So you're more than welcome to wait until Andy and I have gone, unless you have something right off the top of your head.
I think the only thing we talked a little bit about is that I actually placed all 3 of my first series with a publisher.
Woohoo!
So they disappeared from Amazon this morning. It's so sad. And I shipped the manuscripts off, and we've been talking about cover designs and editing and all sorts of stuff.
That's awesome. And it's with Athon Books, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Athon Books is run by some pretty awesome people who actually got their start in sci-fi, and they've recently migrated over to fantasy. So it's going to be interesting to see how they do with your fantasy books.
Mm-hmm. It's going to be an experience. It's going to be a lot of fun.
That's awesome.
Athon has like connections to Simon. If I've heard right, I think they have connections to Simon Vance. But anyway, at least they have a connection to really good audiobook people. So you are in good hands, my friend.
Mm-hmm.
Andy, I know you have good news. It seems like writing 12,000 words a day always brings you good news.
Well, I suppose my good news would be that I finished the rough draft for Steel and Valor, which is Silent Champions Book 3. So that's the rough draft done. So I know how the story ends. I know, who's the bad guy, how they die. Well, more or less. Still haven't figured out how to kill him. All the twists and turns, the plots, and all that kind of stuff. So now I just go back through it and I make it sound all pretty, and then ship it off to the beta readers, hopefully by the first or second weekend of May, which is super exciting because that's the third book, and it's going to clock in at probably like 220 to 240,000 words because it's just this big book. But it was so much fun to write.
This is book 2, right?
3.
Book 3. Jesus, man, are you still writing 12,000 words a day?
Well, right now that I'm doing the cleanup, it's probably closer to 6 to 9. Because you got to focus on making everything sound pretty, so you can't like just hammer out the words.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then I got the final edits back on Silent Champions Book 1, so I'm going to be sending that out to ARC readers soon. I'm going to start sending it out to blog sites and review sites, and the people who won the giveaway in Andy Peliquin's Fantasy Fiends Facebook group, they will be receiving their copy as soon as I can put it together. I just got to do some, the formatting stuff, the copying and pasting of every, I always like to do little images at the beginning of each chapter. So I made the image, I don't know, 4 months ago. Now I've just got to copy and paste it at the beginning of each chapter and make sure that everything looks pretty and stuff.
I believe Rebecca was one of the winners.
Well, it was actually her husband who won, but he wasn't on Facebook. So I just tagged Rebecca in the post because she was on Facebook.
Oh, I got you. Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure when you're married, you're like morbidly sewed by the hip. So it's like the same person anyway. Anyway, so is that
spoken like someone who is not married?
Yeah, it'll be a while. At least 3 months. No, I'm kidding. So my good news is I actually have decided to go back to college, or at least community college, for the fall semester for 2 more years. And I've decided to get my associates in Japanese. And I just feel I do much better in a classroom setting. I mean, it's not huge news. It's just one class, right? One class every semester. But it's something I'm really excited about because whenever I'm in a classroom setting, I take it very seriously. And I was actually really excited because today was the first day I actually got to use my Japanese dictionary given to me by Rajin and Rebecca. So guys, thank you again for that. I feel like it took me 10 minutes to find what I needed in the dictionary, but besides that, it's all great. I do have the final-ish copy for book 4's cover.
Ooh,
and
exciting.
Yeah, I'm hitting 78,000 words today in book 4. And we are less than, I believe, 10 days now from the release of book 1, and the jitters are killing me.
That's exciting.
Yes, it is. So, but that is my good news for today. And I think that is perfect to move right into our topic. Andy, why don't you take it away?
Well, okay, so it's actually kind of an interesting thing that James suggested, the redemption arc, because after watching the latest episode of Game of Thrones, I've seen like 50 articles on both Jaime Lannister and Theon Greyjoy saying, remember, Jaime Lannister shoved a kid out the window, did horrible things. Theon Greyjoy, all kinds of terrible stuff. And yet now the audience is actually on their side. Like a lot of people, they were rooting for Theon. They were happy when in episode 2, Sansa.
Wait, what episode? Of the new season?
Yeah, of the new season.
Oh, I haven't seen it.
Well, something not bad happens to him, and the audience was happy about that. As opposed to wanting to see him die like they did 3 or 4 seasons ago when he betrayed the Starks and he nearly killed Bran and Rickon and stuff like that. Like, so he's had this big long redemption arc, but then if you go back to the things that he did originally, he killed 2 children. Literally, he slit their throats and burned them alive.
Yeah.
Does this man deserve a redemption arc? And it sort of brings up that question of, is redemption something that everyone deserves? Is it something that everyone can attain? Or are there lines that once crossed can never be redeemed. It's sort of an interesting thought experiment because I don't think we can ever, legislate righteousness and say, they can never or they can. But it's an interesting thing to discuss and to think about.
And how did we get to today's topic? Was it James? Was it you?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And why did you suggest this theme?
Well, two things. One is in my latest book is called Indentured Magic, which is based on human trafficking. And in there, the main character starts off kind of, she's just thinking too much of herself. She thinks she's all that, and she's not. Gets herself in trouble, and eventually does redeem herself. And a couple of the characters are, on the verge of just totally giving up, and they get restored back to, a positive state. But the other thing is, I got another book I'm getting ready for. I do a thing called Juno Rimo, which is like Nano, only it's in June. And I'll write a whole book. And what I'm plotting there is one of the antagonists in my main series is going to become the protagonist, and he's going to show you why what he did made sense and was a good thing for him. And that's something that got me. I read Elie Modesitt, The Colors of Chaos, and The Magical Engineer, and he did that, and it just blew me away. One book was the white guys with the good guys, and the other book, the black guys with the bad guys, and they both made sense, and they both were right, and they both were justified, and they both were seeing the same conflict from the other side. And it was like, wow, that's great. What a concept.
So it was from the same plot, just two different books?
Yes, two different books. And I got in some ways into the second book, and I was like, wait, this is the same story, only the black guy that you see off scene as the antagonist was the hero of the other book. And it just blew me away. It just made so much sense. I'm like, oh, you're right. Because the hero is not just trying to be a bad guy. He's trying to do what he thinks is right. Right.
That's awesome. We've actually talked about that on the podcast before, where a good villain actually has a motive that makes sense to the reader sometimes. And I actually sent Andy a meme when the villain is making low-key sense. The guy's taking a sip of whiskey. Because I feel like that's so Andy, because Andy is a professional villain writer, I feel like.
They're fun. Your villains, your hero's only as good as his villain. But so I actually just yesterday, I think, wrote the sort of big confrontation between the villain who's been manipulating the characters behind the scenes, because it's classic sort of military stories. So there's always got to be the misdirect where the spec ops guys go after one villain, turns out it's another villain altogether. It's a whole thing. So this guy's been manipulating them for 3 books behind the scenes, and so finally there's this confrontation. And I still didn't know how I wanted to play him as I was writing him. Like they go and they find him, and literally before I sat down to start writing him, I didn't know whether I wanted him to actually be redeemed at the end, what his motivations fully were. And so it was interesting to sort of to walk through that journey as I was writing the character, because I'm not going to tell you how I ended up with him, whether he's redeemed or not, but it was just such an interesting thing because in my original draft, I have them capture him and imprison him and torture him for information. Now, I'm not going to tell you if I changed that draft, or if I had them kill him, or if they don't even torture him because he's so remorseful that he cracks down and gives what he wants, or whether he holds out and makes them kill him or whatever. Like, I'm not going to tell you what it is because that would spoil it. But it's an interesting sort of thought experiment that right up until I sat down to write it, I didn't know everything to know about this character. And then as I was writing it, all these things came out, his motivation, his actions, what his perspective on the thing was. And then I knew whether or not I could redeem him.
And so you're not going to tell us. So you're creating a cliffhanger for all of us.
Pretty much. That's the point of all of my books, is to make you want to read them, Stevie.
That's true, but I thought we were like close, Yeah, it's an interesting. This is actually something I've never thought about when writing a villain, if they should be redeemed or not. And to this day, I have not written a villain or an antagonist or anyone that's been a bad guy that has been redeemed. Actually the opposite, I have written good guys that have turned bad. And when I say bad, I mean super sour, extremely evil, and very selfish. I think a common theme in my books is the same theme that comes from what is that book? It's the one with the the island where all the boys are left on it. Lord of the Flies. I love that theme, but it is off topic. But actually, I mean, I guess not, because I'm assuming we've all read Lord of the Flies.
I haven't, but you can talk about it without worrying about spoiling it for me, Stevie.
Okay. Well, at the end, the boys go. One stays civilized, and the others go crazy. They become like these tribal maniacs, and these are like 8 to 12 years old, and they kill one of the boys by dropping a rock on his head.
Oh,
and
wow.
at the very end, yes, it's really dark, and a few kids get killed, but this one was on purpose. And they're running after the civilized boy, and they run him down to the beach, and the Navy is there to pick him up, and all the kids start crying, like bawling, and they realize that they changed in a matter of months just from being on an island. And I guess my question would be, can the boys that killed that other boy be redeemed? You know?
Well, what did you think about, like, once you got to the end of this story? How did you feel about that character?
I still hated him. I still hated him, because the kid that they kill is someone that's very sweet and kind. But, as I've gotten older, I feel like if I read the book, I would have a different view. I have a more mature view, and I would think, that they were scared, and that was their motivation for trying to create this hierarchy, just trying to survive, and they just went nuts. I don't know. It was just something interesting, and it's a common theme in my books is humans resorting to a more primal area of their life. It doesn't really have much to do with this topic, though. I'm just saying I haven't redeemed the character yet. I've had good characters make bad mistakes and get redeemed from it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, there's a difference, I'd say, between a small mistake and sort of like evil villainy. Like, I mean, probably the most classic redemption arc is going to be Darth Vader. Right up until that last moment, he was the villain. Now, you could see the conflict and stuff going on through his head throughout the last episode, but up until he made that choice, there was no redemption for him. Now, you take someone like Ramsay Bolton from Game of Thrones, the guy who's been a sadistic bastard the entire episode. I mean, the entire season or seasons. And what would redeem him in the eyes of the readers? I think if I saw him sacrifice himself in some massive way to save people, to stop the Night King or to, whatever, I would have been like, okay, he was still a total utter bastard the entire show. But then there was that little bit of goodness in him at the end that made me say, not the worst person in the world. In the end, he died a total bastard, so he wasn't redeemed.
Oh, I didn't know he died. No.
How far behind are you?
I stopped after the Red Wedding.
Oh, so you don't even care.
Wow.
I do, but the Red Wedding was so traumatic that I was like, I don't know if I could continue. So I have a question for both of you. So back to Darth Vader, and I personally think he was redeemed at the end. Is redemption objective? Is it subjective? Is it only so we know he's redeemed in Luke Skywalker's mind? Hopefully everyone's seen Star Wars. But is he redeemed in the viewer, in the watcher, the reader? Is he not redeemed if, let's say I thought he was still a bastard? Is that a,
it depends on the reader's personal viewpoint, right? Some people are more forgiving, some people aren't. I mean, I know people who hold a grudge forever. And one of my favorite sayings is, I don't hold a grudge. And if it looks like I do, it's because you're pissing me off fresh every day.
Oh,
I don't hold a grudge, right? I get over it. I'll give you a chance, right? But if you keep on, messing me over, eventually I'm going to get, tired of it and say, that's it. Right. So some people, they'll say, yeah, okay, the guy did show that he had some good in him, so let's believe that. And others go, no, sorry, scales are too heavy on the bad side. Not going to happen.
So it is subjective then.
I think so.
Always. I mean, what was I going to say? I'm saying too much. Andy, say something.
I'm not going to say anything because I don't have anything to add yet. I'm waiting for you to say intelligent things for me to, counter say to.
now I'm like stuck.
Now, I will say that probably one of the things that, you know, like we've talked about villains on the podcast, a special episode a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about the things that make people irredeemable. They're irredeemable, and there are a couple of things that I would say that make people irredeemable. Consistent cowardice is definitely one of them. If someone continues to make the cowardly choice over and over until the very end, they'll never be redeemed.
I have one.
But if there is at that final moment, you can be a coward the entire time, but then there's that one moment of bravery, and that's all it takes to redeem you in that sense. Now, that doesn't make you any less a coward. The rest doesn't, excuse any of your actions. But there is that moment of redemption where you took the courageous action, the self-sacrifice, whatever it is, and that's enough to redeem you. But cowardice is not one of the big ones.
I think for me would be bullying. And I think we can all agree that Ramsey is just an intense bully. The way he tortures Theon. I don't know. For me, bullying, and that was actually another, that was part of Lord of the Flies when they were killing that that kid. His name is Porky, and that was like his rude nickname. I think it was Porky.
Pork pie.
Was it pork pie? Anyway, they bullied him before they got on the island, and it just intensified after that. I don't know. For me, bullying is irredeemable, and you would have to do something extremely big. So here's a question for both of you: have you ever written a book or read a story where the one of the main themes of the book was the hero redeeming something that he did in, like, let's say, the inciting moment at the very beginning of the story? So the whole book is just him trying to redeem himself. I can't really think of one. At first I was thinking Sword in the Stone, but that doesn't make sense. So are the main characters trying to redeem himself? What about the Hunter, Andy? He did a lot of horrible stuff. Did he change at one point and was motivation trying to be redeemed? Or
I mean, the truth is that he never really did anything too horrible. Like if you read everything he's done, none of it is too bad. He killed a lot of people, right? But every time he killed people, it was pretty clear to him that they deserved it. So he had that conscience. Granted, he killed a bunch of people, but there was a reason behind it. And he never killed anybody that made him irredeemable. Essentially, he never killed any children. He never killed, or he killed an innocent man by accident because he was hired to do it. It was, he didn't know the guy was innocent. He thought he was a rapist. So, in his mind, it wasn't something. He wasn't an innocent person who got killed. So it doesn't make him irredeemable in that sense.
Would you guys say that mistakes are easily redeemable if it's like a true mistake? Like my brother and I were talking about involuntary manslaughter when you run over somebody on accident. Is that redeemable? Sometimes they can go to prison and sometimes they don't have to, and it depends on the situation. So is something like involuntary manslaughter, you knock a tree, an apple falls and it hits someone in the head and kills them. Can they be redeemed? What do you think?
For me, it's intent. That if you didn't intend to kill somebody, then it's you can't consider that as an evil motivation, right? Mm-hmm. If you were a slovenly drunk and you got in your car and you drove off and killed somebody, then that you had a choice and you made a bad choice, right? But if you slid through the stop sign, on an icy road and nailed somebody, sorry, I mean, I didn't try to, I didn't mean to.
I would agree with you there, right? And actually, me and my girlfriend were talking about this, and that is psychopaths. People that are in cults and brainwashed. If they hurt somebody else, can they do something to redeem themselves if they snap out? I mean, I don't think a psychopath can snap out of it. I'm not sure. I'm no psychologist, but someone who is mentally challenged, someone who has a problem mentally, or someone that has been brainwashed by years of, being in a cult or something like that, and they do something terrible, let's say murder, and then let's say they change, find God, they do charity work. Can they be redeemed? And that's
absolutely.
They can. You think
absolutely.
they can?
I would say mainly because in a way they were victims.
Okay.
So like they are as much Yeah, they're victims in that circumstance. As someone who's been raised in a cult,
I always use that as an example because Andy, no one's been raised in a cult, and it's so interesting to listen to you talk about it.
Yeah. So okay, let's just go back to my past, the things that I learned, the things that I did. None of which was terrible. None of which led to, innocent people being hurt. None of which led to, things that I should be arrested for. But just the actions that I took, the things that I thought were normal within the context of my cult. Having stepped back, having removed myself from that situation, having seen the world at large, and I can look back and I can say, wow, I can't believe I did that. But at the time, I didn't know any better. There are people who choose to join a cult. They do know better because they were raised in what would be considered normal society. And then they take these decisions to join the cult. And then they know what is considered socially acceptable, but their actions are governed by the cult. So they're a little bit more to blame. Whereas someone like myself, who was raised inside this cult, this context, I had no notion of what the outside world was. Beyond, very limited access to any sort of outside information. So these actions that I took within that, they were governed by my very limited worldview. The more I learned, the more I came to understand the world at large. And then I was able to have more of an understanding of what not only my actions, what governed my actions, but how my actions would be perceived by society at large. And so then I have the perspective now that I didn't have growing up. So young people who are born into and raised inside a society, like imagine a society of racism, a society where slavery is perfectly acceptable. There are some people who have, let's say, the intellectual and the moral capacity to understand that slavery is wrong. But for someone who's been told their entire life, oh, slavery is perfectly normal, these people, they want to be subjugated, and they never receive information to the contrary, it's nearly impossible to understand that slavery is wrong. Not impossible, obviously, because you see people being hurt and all of that. But just to put that into a frame of reference that people will understand. If you have no idea of what life is like outside of your little bubble, that's all you know. That's all the information that you have to make your decisions on. So being judged by outside standards is a little bit different. It's sort of like, imagine that you, Stevie, went to the country of Brunei. And because you had a beard, and in the country of Brunei, beards are illegal for men. What? You went to jail and were executed.
What?
I'm just saying.
No way. Is that real?
Exactly. No, I don't think so. I doubt it.
Oh,
but
I
just imagine,
like, what the hell?
Imagine that you went to Brunei, the country of Brunei, with no concept of the society there, and then you were executed for it.
Yes, I totally
you'd be like, what the hell?
Yes.
So people who were born into these societies and find out there's more outside, they are, in a way, they're victims of their circumstances. Now, someone who was born in normal society and then integrates into a cult or into any society like this, they are responsible for or they're much more responsible for their actions because they know outside the context. They have had context essentially given to them. So they're responsible in a way that people who were born to it necessarily might not be.
I think you answered my question that I was about to ask, and that was if the leader of a cult could be considered irredeemable.
No, because I will say that a lot of cults, they're not started for the purpose of fucking people over, right? I would say that 90% of cults, I don't know all of them, I just know mine, they're started with good intentions. People, they want something better. They want something pure. The one that I was in, it was started in the 1960s around the Vietnam War era. People, they wanted peace. They wanted, the hippie culture. They wanted a break from the structured religion that felt super stifling. The thought that, you get a job, you get married, you have kids, you die. They wanted this sort of freedom that was super popular in the hippie era. So this is when this cult society cropped up, and it was exactly what so many people wanted because it gave them something that they wanted. And I would say the guy who started it, I don't think he was necessarily out to hurt people. Over the course of the evolution of the cult, it ended up hurting a lot of people. And that doesn't make him irredeemable. It means that he has a lot to pay for, but he can pay for the the consequences of his actions, because he didn't go into it, or I don't think he went into it saying, all right, let's fuck people up, you know?
Yeah.
If you have a cult that is created by someone for this purpose of fucking people up, then they should be judged. But I think it comes down to the three elements of every decision. There's the intention, there is the action, and then there's the consequence. If you go into it with a good intention and the actions are good, but the consequences are bad, it doesn't necessarily make it a bad decision. It just means the outcome wasn't what you were expecting. If you go into it with good intentions, you take the wrong actions, but the consequences benefit the world, like killing Hitler to stop the Holocaust, maybe it's the right action. If you go into it with bad intention, but you take the right action and the consequences are good, maybe it's not a fully evil action. Now, if you go into all three of them, bad actions, bad intentions, bad consequences, then it's a lot more evil, per se.
Jeez, man. That was awesome. You sure do know a lot about cults. James, I feel like you haven't, we've been taking this from you. And my question to you is, do you have an example in your head of something in your books that, that has to do with the topic, an irredeemable character, a character that was redeemed?
The whole concept of writing a character that's, that has his own positive motivations, I used heavily in my last book. I needed an antagonist, but I needed him to be justifiably behaving the way he was. But it turned out that he's a very polished, very smooth sociopath. And I did a lot of research on how pedophiles groom children to be taken away from their families and use that as motivation. And it was horrible. It was such a dark topic. Like, took me 3 months to get that book out of my head after it was done.
But I
sounds
learned
so much about the techniques, and I took a lot of psychology, so I know about operant conditioning and how you can influence people and motivate them without them realizing you're doing it. And it's scary sometimes what some of those techniques are.
I had to learn a little bit about that for my final French paper, and it was on how jihadists, jihadism, how they recruit people and then how they manipulate them into becoming suicide bombers. Mm-hmm. And it was fascinating what they do. And it's not really for that. I don't know anything about pedophilia, which is a good thing. I don't think I'm as tough as you to do that research. But it's more about choosing the victim, which was incredibly interesting. I don't know if that was the same way.
Oh, absolutely.
Really? Oh, wow.
Yeah. How to spot a victim? Yeah, I actually have like 2 chapters in the book that show you how he picks a victim, and when he gets it wrong, what happens. And it's kind of scary. It really is. And you look at this stuff, and then you look and you realize it's actually happening today everywhere. Not just, it happens right down the street from where you live. It's really scary.
If I had done that research, I would have been, and if I had a kid, I would have become like more security dad, for lack of a better term.
I have grown boys. There are 4 of them. They're all adults. So
they're all adults. Yeah, no one's gonna take them. Morbid joke, but I was at the Renaissance Fair this past weekend, and there was this probably 350-pound guy of pure muscle, and he had this shirt on that says very hard to abduct. I was like, there's no way I could get this guy in a van. And I know that's a horrible joke, but I kept seeing him around. I was like, geez, that's an awesome shirt. And I bet they only came in like extra large, double XL too, because if I wore that, it would make no sense. Because, a big, powerful guy could probably just lift me up in his one arm. Anyway, so Andy, I feel like, do you want to go ahead and do the reading, or?
Yeah, totally.
Because I am interested. So, James, you want to tell us a little bit about what we're reading today?
In this story, one of the characters in Indentured Magic is actually somebody who has Stockholm Syndrome. Her name is Ingress. So she believes that being captive and sold for, they sell their bodies and their magic in slavery. And she thinks that this is a good thing. So she's totally on board. And she gets separated from the bad guy, and she runs into the hero. And she's actually the agent of getting the hero both to the place she needs to be and abducted. And in this scene, Ingress has just used her magic to influence somebody to let her stay in his room and to feed her, and she got busted into bar. So this is the scene where Medea first meets Ingress and she's now dealing with this girl who has Stockholm syndrome and is really trying really hard to get back into the slavery where she, was abandoned.
And what is Stockholm syndrome?
Stockholm syndrome is when someone who's been held captive starts to identify with their captors, and they start to believe that's the Patty Hearst. And maybe you guys aren't old enough for that, right? She was taken by the SLA in the '60s, and eventually became a big member and did all sorts of stuff with them. And she was very heavily influenced. That's called Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah,
that's interesting. My brother had to study that in criminology, and I remember him telling me, talking to me about it and how scary it was, and how anyway. So, James, who would you like? You're the director. Who should read what? Do you want to be the narrator? Would you like me to be the narrator?
I will, and I'm actually not prepared to read, so
okay.
We're going to read.
Andy, would you like me to narrate?
Sure. Go for the narration, Stevie.
Okay.
Sure thing.
What kind of accents do these girls have, James? Do I get to do accents or no?
You can do whatever you want. Oh, sorry.
In your head, what do they sound like?
They sound like typical Americans.
Oh my God!
Don't medieval. Do that. Medieval. So they got a little bit of a little bit of a British twang to them, maybe.
Done.
Okay. So we have Medea and we have Ingress. Do you guys want to split those, or do you want Andy to do both of them?
Yeah, I'll do both. Unless James, you've got the snippet ready to read.
I don't. No, I'm sorry.
Okay.
All right, I'll do both.
Totally unprepared.
No problem. No problem. We kept your interest away with our fabulous babbling and rambling, or at least mine. Andy doesn't ramble. I ramble. Right, Andy?
That's right.
Okay. So so if you can't see the screen, yeah, you can't see the screen, but he has it in. James is so nice because he has it in manuscript format. It's so easy to read. This is the first time I've had this. Excellent. Okay. Making her way back to the Dragon's Tooth, Medea hired a room for the night. The bed was too soft, the water too cold, and the room stank of overuse. But Medea slept so soundly that she almost missed the morning meal. She woke with a start at the sunlight streaming in her window. She slept late. She never slept late. She splashed frigid water on her face and rushed to the public room where the serving girl had just started clearing away the remnants of the morning meal.
Don't take that yet.
Medea begged.
I overslept and I'm ravenous. Take what you want. 2 coppers for the lot. I'd just be throwing it to the hogs otherwise.
The girl offered her a plate and held the tray while Medea loaded it with a selection of sausages, bacon, eggs, and bread. She slathered the bread with fresh butter and thanked the girl, handing over an extra copper for her kindness. The public room was nearly empty, with only one patron sitting across from a plate that held the remainder of a meal. The young woman had brown curls that hung down over a dress that looked better suited to an evening affair than the morning meal. Her face was resting in her hands.
Mind if I join you?
Medea asked.
I'm not in the mood for company.
The girl spoke without looking up.
Sorry, I didn't mean to intrude. You look like you could use a friend.
Medea moved towards an empty seat.
No, sit.
The woman waved her to the empty chair across from her.
Maybe I do need a friend. I'm all alone in a strange town with no coin.
She glanced around the room.
I don't even know where I am. What's your name?
Medea asked.
Mine's Medea. Ingress. Ingress, you're in Shadowwick. Where's that? How'd you get here?
How could someone not know where they were from? Could she be one of the girls Medea was looking for? The cuffs on her wrist reminded her of the ones on the dead girl. Medea didn't want to press, so she decided to attack her meal and satisfy her hunger. Let Ingress get comfortable with her presence, then maybe she'd be more inclined to tell her tale. The meats were good, cured just the way she liked them, but everything tasted a bit exotic. She wasn't that far from home, but she definitely wasn't home. Strange how each town had its own peculiarities. Medea ate in silence. Some folks hated silence. They just had to fill it up, even with empty words.
I was first girl.
Ingress's voice was low, as if she didn't want anyone around them to hear.
He used me for my magic, but I escaped. That must have been quite a feat.
Medea shoveled salt pork into her mouth, feigning disinterest.
It was, but now I'm stranded with no coin, no place to sleep. I had to steal what little coin I used to purchase my morning meal.
Before Medea could respond, a man burst into the public room.
There you are! You took my purse!
His hair stuck out from his head, and his eyes were puffy.
Why, sire?
Ingress replied.
I have no idea what you're speaking of.
Medea could feel the heat of the lie in her words.
Give it back!
He held his hand out.
Now, or I'll get the justicer. He'll lock you up, and then you'll have a place to sleep. But I only wanted to let you sleep after your hard work last night.
She winked at the man. A confused look crossed his face.
Last night? Why didn't you wake me? You looked so sweet lying there. I didn't want to disturb you. I was on the floor with a pillow over my face. And such a handsome face it is.
Medea choked back a snicker. Certainly, there was more to this woman than met the eye.
Here.
She held out a small purse.
I was going to bring it back after I ate. You wore me out and I was famished.
She shook the purse at him.
Come get it. I won't bite.
The man accepted the purse and hung it on his belt.
Why am I so sleepy? Because we had a grand evening.
Ingress batted her eyes at the man and added,
Lover, you were exceptional.
He looked at her as if trying to decide what to do.
Well,
she said,
I promised you a night of pleasure in return for a bed and a morning meal. I think I've satisfied my end of the bargain, don't you? I guess so.
He rubbed his head.
It's all a bit hazy. Must have had too much ale. You had a lot, but not too much. You satisfied me more than once.
The man's face lit up.
I sure did. You did, but this morning I'm having a meal with my friend here. I remember you,
he said.
Did you ever find the bawdy house you were seeking? I did. You were very helpful.
Medea held her gaze on the man until he started fidgeting.
Sorry for the interruption,
he said.
I'll be on my way.
Medea turned to Ingress.
Whatever did you do to him? That was quite something. A simple spell. He has memories of a night that never happened. You used magic on him? A little.
She held up her wrist.
I've seen those cuffs before. What are they for?
Medea asked.
Just decorative.
The girl withdrew hands, but Medea grabbed one wrist and pulled it close. She examined the cuff. The symbols were the same as those on the dead girl, and the knots were unmistakably the same.
Who put those on you? The man who held me captive. He sold my magic to anyone who had coin.
Medea calmed herself. Here was the first clue as to the identity and location of the slave traders. She considered her best approach and decided on the truth. What could it hurt to let the woman know she was interested in the man who held her captive?
I'm looking for this man,
Medea said.
My sister was abducted. I think he might have her. Oh? What's your sister's name? Perhaps I know her. Lana. She's a bit younger than me. That's why you look familiar. I see it now, the family resemblance. You know Lana?
Medea sputtered.
How can you know Lana? Does he have her? Of course. That snutch is his new princess, his new girl. He's so proud of her. He treats her special, just like he used to do with me. She'll get her soon enough, though. He took another girl yesterday, one with a lot of power. Your sister won't be his favorite for long. Where is she? Where is my sister? I have no idea. I don't know where he was keeping me or anyone.
She sat back, a satisfied smile crossing her lips.
He's coming back for me, you know. He wouldn't leave me behind. I'm his first girl. What will you do until then?
Better to keep the girl focused on her own plight. Besides, Medea had less faith in his return than Ingress.
If only I could get these off, I could use my magic to find him. I've discovered how to do a few simple spells even with them on, but not that one. Why don't you take them off? Because they're enchanted.
She shook her wrist in Medea's face.
See these knots? They're special, designed to capture and hold my magic. They can't be undone except by someone who has magic. Have you tried cutting them? Of course, see for yourself. Pull out one of those fancy daggers and give it a go.
Medea drew her dagger and placed the tip at the center of the knot. She gained some familiarity with knots while living with Master Donrish. He used a series of intricate knots to wrap the handle of his sword and had driven her to tears more than once while she learned how to copy them exactly. The point sunk into the leather thong but did nothing. Medea pushed harder, worried about slipping and cutting the girl.
Magic indeed. I told you. Wait, I think it loosened a bit.
Medea picked at the knot with her fingernails. She tried again. This time the move, if just a bit. And Medea painstakingly worked the intricate knots loose. She had never seen such knots. They were complex and tight. But in the end, she managed to untie both cups.
You know what this means?
Ingress
No.
asked.
It means you have magic. And I don't need someone like you trying to worm their way into my station. I'll thank you to leave me alone.
With that, Ingress stood and stormed from the room, leaving Medea wondering what she had said. Awesome.
Oh, damn.
That was good. I love the dialogue. The dialogue is so good. And it just made even better with Andy's amazing acting talent.
I love the accent.
Thank you. I think I flicked between like 3 or 4 different accents throughout, but I kind of got it in the end.
It's hard doing 2 girls at one time. I feel like that's got to be tough.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard doing any voices that are very similar at the same time because you kind of like homogenize both of them.
Yeah. So James, what book was that from again?
This is called Indentured Magic.
And is that available on Amazon right now?
Yeah, it came out in just right around Christmas time.
Oh, nice. I'm looking for it now. Let's see. What is the And so Athon didn't take these books. What did they take? Oh, I see.
No,
now.
they took the Apprentice to Master series, which is a 3-book series that centers around 2 a wizard and a sorceress, a young boy and a young girl. Well, not young; they're like 18, and that's old for fantasy.
Is that
yes.
the Knights of the Dead God one, or is that another one?
No, this is my series.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, right. That's someone else. Huh.
Yep, that is.
It's a James something. Is it James Jenkins?
I think so. There's too many James around that forum there.
Lots of Jameses, exactly.
Right. So when I've been writing short stories for a really long time, and a while back, it's been many years now. My wife went home to the Philippines for 3 months and left me home alone. And married men should never be left home alone because they get into a lot of trouble. So I took a short story and I turned it into a book. I wrote a whole, I read fantasy all the time. How hard can it be? So I wrote a whole book, and then I found an editor, and she told me how horribly I had screwed it up, and how bad the structure was, and we fixed it, and got it all cleaned up nice. And then I put it on Amazon and went to Europe for a month, and came back, and there was money in my account. I was like, "Oh, this is so cool!"
That is
like
awesome.
7 years ago, and I was like, "Okay, great." So now I write more books. So I just kept on going, and
that's awesome.
Back in the day, it was easy to make money on Amazon. It's not quite so easy anymore.
Yeah, around the 2012, right? The 2012 area. Yeah, absolutely. I've heard that. I still feel like we're on the wave, but I'm also a very positive person. You can ask Andy. I'm sickeningly positive. Sickeningly. What did I say? Sickeningly?
Yes.
Sickeningly. I'm still blaming the French talk before the podcast, everyone. I do speak English properly. I speak it good. So this has been James Eggebeen. Where can they find you, man?
On Amazon, no, but some of my books are gone. You can find me on Facebook, and just search for James Eggebeen. There's not a lot of us.
I'm going to add you right now.
My own website. I think sent you guys a link. It's just www.jameseggebeen.com. See, this is all real similar stuff. My email is james@eggebeen.com. Because I've been a computer guy, so I was in the internet when it didn't actually cost anything to register a domain, and you could get your own name.
Nice.
When you could get your own name. Awesome.
All my friends are like, I couldn't get my name because somebody else had it. So yep, no, I got it.
Very nice.
There's this Dutch furniture store that's been dying for me to let my domain go because they want it. And I'm like, nope, sorry, you can't have it.
They want James Eggebeen?
They want the Eggebeen domain.
Oh,
that's their name too, right? So that's where they came from. So they're like, yeah, okay, some guy in America got it.
Don't let them have it.
I got a 10-year auto renewal. No, I'm not giving it up.
Wow, I actually had someone contact me too about actually a lot of my domains wanting it, but you're right. I don't sell them either. All right, Andy, anything else you want to talk about on this?
That's it for us.
That's it. Let me see. So thank you guys for watching. Rebecca, Najeen, I believe we also had Louie. Hey, Louie. And Holly and
Luis,
Mistletoe.
Steve. Luis.
Louis.
I'm pretty
What
sure.
did I say?
You said Louis. You said it like the French way.
Louis. Oh, I did, didn't I? And AF Stewart, thank you guys for sticking around and watching the Fantasy Fiends podcast. I know you're just here for me and James. Andy, you're just
Extraneous.
Here. You're just here. Extraneous. That's right. Oh, and I started my own group for finally on Facebook. Collier's Conquerors.
It's actually Stevie's Sycophants. That's the
yeah, that was hilarious. I didn't have to look that up at all. I did, and I actually just forgot what it means again. What human besides James and Andy knows what that word means?
I use it so much.
Okay, that must be it.
I use it in every series at least once because there's always like those suck-ups, whether it's to the king or to some powerful nobleman or to some priest. Like there's always someone who's sucking up to someone, an ass kisser. And so sycophants is just such a great word.
Thank you so much. It's such a nice word to describe Stevie Collier. Yes, thank you so much. That was, and the sad part is that was like the first post on my group, which adds flavor to Collier's Conquerors, and I want to keep it going that way too. So awesome. Well, I think next week is Thursday, and that will be the day before my book releases.
Ooh.
And I just felt my stomach twist. So, guys, wish me luck. James, thank you so much for being on the Fantasy Fiends podcast, man. We had a freaking blast. What an excellent topic and amazing dialogue, by the way. I'm jealous.
Great, thanks.
Yes, welcome. Well, awesome. That's it. So, Andy, who are we having next week? Do you know?
I believe we're having Dale Lucas on next week. It was going to be John Gwynn, but his family is having some health problems, so he's focusing on his family's well-being. We'll have him back on later in the year, fingers crossed. But we'll have Dale Lucas talking about his stories. It's sort of, it looked like detective novels or police, like buddy cop in a fantasy world, which really gave me the Terry Pratchett vibe. So I'm hoping that his books are funny, like the Guard series in Terry Pratchett, because those were my favorite of his books. So it's going to be really exciting to talk to him.
I actually need to read some Terry Pratchett. I have yet to read Terry Pratchett, and I feel very dirty about not reading Terry Pratchett.
That's like saying you haven't watched Star Wars, Stevie.
God, I know, and you're not the first person to like get on to me about it. I need to read Terry Pratchett. In fact, I just need to dive in and get an audiobook by him. I also haven't read R.A. Salvatore. So
wow.
Yes, I know, and I feel so bad, but I'm reading you, R.J. Barker, and I just got a book from Ryan Kirk. So I'm like loaded down. I'm loaded down. I wish there was just a way you could put a USB in like your taint, you know?
I was right about to like make a comment that made you sound really intelligent, but then you ruined it, Stevie, with the taint joke.
Taint is a very sexy word. It's rolls off the tip of the tongue. Taint. Okay. My dad said if you laugh at your own joke, it's no longer funny. So I'm going to end the Fantasy Fiends podcast. Thank you guys for watching so much. We will be back next Thursday for Dale Lucas. And remember, my book comes out on Friday, and I'm so excited because it's been a year since I published. James, I wish you prosperity and so much luck, man. Much love. Thank you so much for being on the Fantasy Fiends podcast. We will see you guys next Thursday. Good night.
Good night.